Hello everyone. The objective for today's class is to understand the need for conservation of water resources, and then we'll try to look into some of the different steps that could be taken to ensure that water resources are conserved. So let us begin. Now, need for water conservation. Now, before we dive into what are the different reasons why we need to water, first we must understand that water is the basic need of people. Increase in population and urbanization, irrigation and industrialization have increased the demand for water and needs for its conservation. So, if the wastage continues, then what will happen? There will be an alarming shortage of water in the future. So, that is why water conservation must be an important task of all of us. So, what do you mean by water conservation? Water conservation means, please underline, water conservation means using water resources wisely. So we must ensure that we make use of water resources wisely so that there is no wastage and no shortage in the future. Now, what are the different reasons and chief reasons why we need effective steps to conserve our water? What are the different reasons? The first reason is that over exploitation of underground water drastically lowers the water table. Because our underground water has been used excessively, when we are constructing or making different forms of irrigation, we use our underground water, isn't it? So because we are excessively overusing the underground water, so because of which the water table has really lowered down, and it is important that we conserve our water now. Second, the loss of vegetation because of deforestation has led to drought and reduction in the rainfall, which reduces the water table, leading to again lower agriculture productivity. So, agriculture productivity is going to be affected if our water table is decreased. So, because of the decreased level of water table, it has affected vegetation and may even lead to drought conditions in the future. So, this is one serious issue and reason why we have to conserve our water. Third, ever increasing demand for agriculture products, forces multiple cropping, leading to greater demand. So because of the rapid increase in the population, and because of rapid increase in the demand for agriculture products by people, what is happening? We are forced to encourage into multiple cropping rather than just growing one single crop. So when we are engaging multiple cropping, meaning we require more water. All right, so that is the third reason why water conservation has to be taken seriously. Fourth, demand for water for industrial use doubles in every 2 decades. Therefore, we have to have proper conservation beforehand. Because the rise in industries are taking place, because of the rapid increase in population, industries are growing, and these industries demand water, and the demand from these industries are rising every decades, every year there is increase in the amount of water that are demanded by the industry. So we must ensure water conservation is done effectively. The fifth reason being increasing population and standard of living will have a greater demand for water in the future. Therefore, we must conserve our groundwater. Because of the rise in the population and the demand from the population, it could be various recreational activities coming up. So you must ensure that we have to preserve our groundwater so that the future generation does not get affected. And the last reason why is that industries such as iron and steel, textile industries, chemical, they need huge quantity of water. So these industries again are very important for population, for the demand of the population to be fulfilled. That is why we must ensure the conservation of water is done seriously and effectively. All right. So those were the reasons why water conservation must be done. Now, there are different, to overcome the shortcomings of the water, the following steps must be implemented. We must ensure and encourage ourselves in taking steps as like watershed management, rainwater harvesting, reusing, recycling water has to be taken very seriously so that water is conserved for the future generation as well. So, what do you mean by watershed management? It refers to a series of steps taken to ensure efficient management and conservation of both the surface and the groundwater. So, basically, steps that has to be taken to make sure the water is managed effectively. For what kind of water? The surface water as well as your underground water. So both water has to be conserved. So that method to conserve water efficiently, both surface and groundwater, is known as a watershed management. So let's learn about more watershed management and how do we encourage this method. Now, first is we must ensure that prevention of surface runoff rainwater, this has to be prevented. So how can we prevent? So we can have an embankment, a raised wall like things where water could be collected. If there's a raised wall, so water could be collected here in small tank like structure, and from where the water can easily seep in and then help in raising. There could be more percolation seeping in of the water, and the water table could be raised. So we have to first ensure that the surface run of water is prevented, by building an embankment or a raised wall, so the water is stored and that water percolates inside the underground water. Second, storage and recharge of underground water by means such as percolation pits, recharge wells. Okay, so we can even store water by making pits, okay, like a hole, a depression on the ground where water could be stored. This is known as a percolation pit. So water can percolate and get collected in the pit, and then from the pit it can percolate further within, so from where it can help us in raising the underground water. So watershed management is one of the effective measure to conserve water, because that can help us to increase the underground water which has been excessively used, and we must ensure that this is done in an effective manner. The second method is rainwater harvesting. Now what is rainwater harvesting? This is the process of augmenting the natural filtration of rainwater to recharge the groundwater and store rainwater in the underground reservoirs. So basically, there are many reasons to harvest rainwater. First, to make sure that the underground water do not decline. Second, to conserve a surface runoff, which leads to, especially during monsoon, there's a lot of runoff and it can lead to flooding and soil erosion. So those are different reasons why rainwater harvesting has to be taken seriously. So what is rainwater harvesting? Please underline. It means to make the optimum use of rain when it occurs. Under this concept, rainwater is collected and stored in a man-made underground or surface tank, and thus its loss to surface runoff, seepage, and evaporation is prevented. So basically, the rainwater means catch when it falls. So basically, we're catching the rainwater and storing it when it falls, so that the underground water table is not affected, it's not depleted, and even the runoff is prevented and evaporation is prevented. Now it's basically, this water is mostly used, the rainwater is mostly used is in the drier months like March to May, where there's scarcity of water. Right, so they have different names. These are different names of rainwater. Khatri, Kul, Johad is a very popular name. All right, Dongs in Assam. So these are different names by which rainwater harvesting is known as in different parts of our country. So that is the main goal of rainwater harvesting, so that the groundwater would not decline, to conserve surface runoff, to reduce soil erosion, and to ensure that flooding of roads does not take place. Moving to the next. What are the main benefits? So this is how you can do rooftop, like if you see rainwater falls and this rainwater gets enters through the filtration tank. From the tank it is again poured into the storage tank, from where the water is then drained out. Alright, now what are the different advantages of rainwater? First, to meet the demand for water during the dry months when there's no water table. So before rainwater harvesting, look at the water table so low. After rainwater harvesting, you can see that the water table has risen up, even the well is not dried. So this is one advantage, the wells don't dry up if there's rainwater. Second, loss of fresh water by surface runoff. If you look here, before rainwater there's lot of runoff and it can lead to flooding, but now when after rainwater and development of pits and tanks, there's more percolation, at the same time less runoff and less floods taking place. Next advantage, it reduces devastating flooding in the low-lying areas. So flooding could be really controlled if we arrest the rainwater. It raises the groundwater by adding to groundwater, because when we have rainwater, we shall not be exploiting or overusing the groundwater, so groundwater table will rise. It improves the quality of groundwater by reducing groundwater pollution. So groundwater pollution could also be prevented, in an environmental friendly manner when we encourage ourselves in rainwater harvesting. And it reduces soil erosion by minimizing runoff. If you look here, if because of the different pits, the soil particles are being trapped in these pits and the percolation takes place, so because of which the runoff of the soil is really minimized or controlled. And there are other methods of recharging underground water or the water table. from well. Okay, so from the rainwater you can have a tank. From that tank it can allow the water to enter to the well, so the well cannot dry. Recharge pits, rainwater collected in 3-meter wide pits. The rainwater here seeps into the raising the groundwater, so there could be small pits like this which could be made from where the rainwater would seep in, get collected and further percolate down. A percolation pit could also be there, which is little wider than the recharge pits. The intention is the same, to soak the water beneath the and recharge the underground. And recharge trenches like this, a deeper one, which are dug to collect the rainwater, which seeps and then again helps in raising the groundwater. So the main objective of all of these and this is basically to recharge the underground water, so that water is stored for future purposes, so that water conservation is done in an effective manner. All right, so that is it. We've learned about why we need to conserve water, what are the different reasons why water conservation must be done, and the different methods. Thank you.